have like hag cackles and like little hag voices that I do to Meg when I'm being baby. My little hag voice.
All right, so today the hags will be chatting about October. Hello, and welcome back to Call Your Coven, practical advice for nonsensical times. My name is Bee. My pronouns are she, her. I'm so excited to be here. And these are my lovely co-hosts.
I'm Jeanna. My pronouns are also she, her. I am the astrologer of the coven.
And I'm Meg. My pronouns are she, they, and I am the card reader, card slinger. I haven't decided. The tarot reader, I guess.
Well, and I'm your numerologist. I didn't say that, but here we are.
Right.
We're your coven. And and I'm wearing, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing my Support Your Local Coven sweatshirt. Plug for YouTube.
Very on theme for an October forecast.
Truly.
I felt like it's witchy season, it's eclipse season, it's almost the witch's new year if you observe and celebrate Samhain as such. So it felt on brand for today. But first and foremost, we just want to say a really huge and heartfelt thank you to everyone who has downloaded, listened, rated and reviewed, left us a comment, supported us on Patreon, and otherwise just enjoyed and shared our show. We are just immensely grateful and honestly thrilled with how this is going so far. So just thank you to everyone who's listened.
Yeah, we're recording this less than a week after launch. And so we're still, I think, very much in the basking in the honeymoon energy of everyone being really excited at the newness. And we hope you stick along for the ride.
100%. Yeah, I feel like this has been such a long time, so many months of talking about it. So it's really exciting to see it out in the world and keep building on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like we said, we're going to talk about October, but like Jeanna said, we are definitely recording this in September. So we're going to just vibe and see if we can really do the forecasting that we are hoping to do.
I like it.
We'll see if we're witches and like.
This is the big test, actually.
Yeah, you didn't know? This is the witch test.
Yeah, good to know. Cool. I'm glad I wore my honeymoon ring.
This is how you get certified, as if you can forecast a thing correctly.
Right.
I hate it. I hate
What's this little witch voice, too? I love it.
I have like hag cackles and like little hag voices that I do to Meg when I'm being baby. Wow, I'm clearly very comfortable because that sure did just come out right now.
Amazing.
My little hag voice.
All right, so today the hags will be chatting about October.
Crone Coven, let's go.
Crone Coven.
Welcome to the Hag Show. We'll be chatting October through obviously the lens of numerology, astrology, and the tarot. But we're going to take turns and giving you these individual forecasts through the lens of our modalities. We're going to talk about them together. And then we are going to continue with our buckets at the end of the episode. So we will talk about finances, home, love, and health using our individual modalities. And obviously, we do want to hear from you. So please let us know if these buckets are working. Let us know what you want to hear more of, what's not working for you, you know, the whole shebang. Let us know. Also, I'm going to say the whole shebang later. And I just said it. This is just October 2024, the whole shebang.
That's the episode title right there, the whole shebang.
I was thinking the hag show was going to be like...
Welcome to the whole shebang hag show.
Hags present the whole shebang.
This is good because I really wanted us to take a deep breath together at the top of this numerological forecast. So this is good. We'll get all of our giggles out. Welcome to October, the 10th month of the year. So at the top here, in through the nose, out through the mouth, just really sit with the fact that we have survived the majority of the year thus far. We've done it. We are here, we are breathing, we are blinking. And in October, the 10th month of the year, we are getting this opportunity within the year to have a reset and a refresh. So numerology really is this great tool for pattern recognition. And I think cycles are clearly patterns that we play out. We observe them, we go through them, again and again and again. And there are quite a few numbers that denote a full cycle, the smallest being 3. You can think of beginning, middle, and end as a whole. And then 12, which is really just 3 in a graduated form. 12 months of the year, 12 signs of the zodiac. But 10 is perhaps the most prominent of the full cycle numbers. And especially in numerology, it denotes a completion of moving through the whole building block spiral of 1 through 9, and then starting over again at 1. So here in October, in the 10th month, we are inherently meeting ourselves at the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. So I think this month could be really juicy and is really going to hold the whole for us, because 10, which I like to think of as just 1 with a backpack on, right? We keep, it's true.
Oh, that's so cute.
We've been through this whole thing and we stick all of our experiences and our learnings and everything in our little pack, and then we start again, so we're back in the beginner seat, but we're not starting from 0. We really are holding everything from the last cycle, bringing it forward with us. And when you add 1 or 10 to the number of the year, which is 8, then that makes 9 our ruling core number of the month. And if you remember from September's forecast, we are handling, at least this year, every month we're getting to revisit a number from the last month. So we hung out with 9 in September, and now it's our core number, and 1 is its little friend umbrella. So October's 2 numbers are 1 and 9, which is the beginning, the end, and really this liminal space between that which we know and what we don't know, and starting over, hopefully from a place of curiosity and optimism and a real willingness to learn and a willingness to throw ourselves into another cycle. So like we talked about in September, 9 does rule endings and completion. And if you're a fan of Campbell's The Hero's Journey, 9, the 9th step is the reward or the gift. So 8 is the ordeal. We've gone through this epic battle, and now in 9, hopefully we have something to show for it. And also 9 is the all, it's community and humanity, it's knowledge, wisdom, maturity. And it's also grief and release, letting things go, moving on. 9 is the archetypal goodbye. So it's really this compost heap of what you have to show for yourself and rewards, but then also what you need to let go of in order to move into the next, which then brings us to 1, right? We're back at the self. We're back at the start. In our hero's journey metaphor, 1 is the call to adventure. So we're heading into the next adventure. We're taking baby steps, but we're taking risks. We're being brave enough to step back into the unknown. So there's a lot of opportunity here in October for us to finally reward ourselves or claim the rewards, claim the fruits of our labors and really celebrate that, but also to finally put down what we're no longer meant to be doing or carrying or giving our time and energy to, and shift our attention to what we want to be doing. And I think especially in an 8 collective year, that want, that desire is really integral to whatever it is that we're putting down and picking up, but we might not feel like we can focus on that, or we should be focusing on what we want. There's a lot, especially in October, there could just be a lot of collective noise. And so focusing on our wants might make us feel selfish, but holding our wants at the core is going to be really important to us this month, as well as thinking about, in terms of community, who do you want to be working with? What collaborations are on the table for you, and how are collaborative efforts helping not only the quote unquote the whole, but your whole as well, the holistic view of you as a person and what you want to be doing. So we're definitely looking at the bigger picture. This is where we're looking at the whole shebang again in October. And I think one really reminds us that each step is valuable, right? So we don't hop from 1 to 9 any more than we actually hop from 9 to 1. I think 9 and 1 kind of are really close to each other. They're numbers that kiss as they meet each other in the spiral. But there are steps in between 9 and 1, even if we're not totally clear on what those steps are. So I think for this month and practical advice, focus on figuring out one thing that you can do, whether it's this month, today, right now, that will serve the bigger picture, but not to get too ahead of ourselves, right? It's like whatever we do right now will have ripple effects into the whole or our whole. So to be really intentional about those efforts. And then before I kick it over to Jeanna, I just want to talk about a little numerological paradox that came through as a way to work with these numbers this month. So we're talking about 1, the beginning, and 9, the end. But what came up as like a helper number for us or a supportive energy is to actually focus on 5, which represents the middle, the midpoint. And I think 5 is really interesting because sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we actually have an easier time giving ourselves what we need when we're in the middle of something than when we're at the beginning or the end of something. Like we really want to get started or we really want to wrap things up and move along. And so we have a tendency to kind of rush those aspects or of the journey or the process. But when we're in the middle, sometimes we just can't. Like there's nowhere to go, or we're waiting to get a green light or for things to clear up, or we know that we're in process. So we're like, okay, I'm going to treat myself really nicely here. And so 5 can help us to focus in on a time where like we have the least amount of rules, where we're the most available to pivot. So I want us to keep in mind like the flexibility that 5 offers as we navigate this liminal space between 9 right now and 1, what is next? Because spoiler alert, we're going to hang out with 1 again in November. So this October is really kind of a transitional month between this and that. And the last thing I will say about 5 is that 5 does denote the middle, but the middle can also be messy. So I've been thinking a lot about this combination of 8, 9, and 1 with our collective energy and moving from September, which was still 8 ruled, into October. I mentioned last month in one of the buckets about 8, 9 being conflict resolution. And so now that we have 1, I really kind of see this as thinking about when we're looking at our communities or the people that we're in community with, or even the collective humanity on whatever larger scale you want to look at, we're now ourselves are back in the mix. So when there's drama, when things kick up, when there's conflict, it's really important for us this month to figure out where we stand personally. And then from there, like what is ours to deal with? What is not our responsibility or our business at all? Like, this is not the month to be getting in the fray just to get in the fray. Again, 9 is maturity and wisdom. And so not every conflict needs your involvement. And actually, this month, and I think some astrology definitely supports this, I think if we're getting involved in shit that's just not ours, there's a greater tendency that it's going to blow back or come back to like bite us in a way that we don't want to deal with. So yeah, just while we're hanging out in the middle, we're taking care of ourselves, but we are not joining conflict for conflict's sake.
Yeah, that that sets us up really well for, I think, the astrology of the month. I love what you said, B, about community, and also just about how we're sort of reaching this collective cycle of embracing, of like kind of moving, even in as much as the messy middle can help us, like we're moving through some of those sharper edges, rougher edges, and toward more unity, because We start the month in Libra season, and Unity is all I'm going to talk about, basically. Not quite Unity, but we start the month in Libra season, which is the first season of autumn here in the Northern Hemisphere. It goes until October 22nd, which is when we enter the decay and compost of Scorpio. So, having distilled our priorities in September, we are now focused on bringing things into harmony, which is so resonant with what Bee said. Venus, and this is a little background astrologically for why we associate things like harmony with Libra season, and that's because Libra is ruled by Venus, the planet who is representative of art and culture and love and beauty and relationship. Venus is like lube. Basically, like Venus is bringing the lube to whatever's involved. And the whole point of that is to reduce friction and to make things like feel better. So, we can see how Venus wants to bring harmony into our relationships and how we interact with the world. But like B said with the numbers, there are some struggle spots here. Harmony is one of those words that gets so grossly misused that I think it's easy to forget like what it actually is. And the concept comes to us from music and chord progression, and people who do music professionally are going to have so much more insight into this subject than I do. But even as someone who was just a casual band nerd for like 10 plus years, it's important to note that harmony is not everyone playing or singing the same part. Like harmony in a choir or an orchestra is achieved when everyone has a separate part that ultimately sounds better together. Harmony brings richness to the whole. The different layers of experience and expression really impact the depth of the music. And the key thing here is that harmony is not something that squashes everyone into the same exact monotone. I really like this one definition I found of harmony that comes from the American Heritage Dictionary. And it says harmony is, quote, a relationship in which various components exist together without destroying one another. I'm going to read that again. Harmony is a relationship in which various components exist together without destroying one another. So, the first step to finding harmony, creating harmony in Libra season is about making sure we are all singing out of the same songbook. There is still intentionality. Harmony is achieved through shared goals and desires. It's not just everyone doing shit at random. In real life, this can look like being in community with people who share your values, but that doesn't mean that you volunteer at the same place. It doesn't mean that one of you is wrong if you pray to different gods or enjoy different kinds of art, or, one of you has kids and your best friend doesn't. Harmony affirms that we all have parts to play and that diversity strengthens us. Diversity is our strength in creating this incredible, beautiful, harmonious world that we live in. And I say this because there is an element of Libra that can be so insistent on the appearance of unity, the appearance of harmony, that it sees any dissonance or variation as a threat. And this can really take hold when dissent is discouraged or when the space for individuation isn't held, when harmony gets misinterpreted to mean we all have to be the same. And I think it's helpful to remember in this that Libra's opposite sign is like fighting for its life, must define the self at all costs, Aries. The thing is with Libra season, our challenge and our lesson is to hold space for the other and the self simultaneously, to not sacrifice our values or do that like false equivocation bullshit that every perspective outside of our own bubble matters. Like, I'm queer. I mean, we're all queer in this room, but like, I'm queer. Meg and so many of my beloveds are non-binary and trans. Like, I am not fucking holding space for a MAGA Republican who wants to criminalize us. I'm not abandoning my self-respect in order to accommodate someone who wants to kill me or who wants to kill someone I care about. But
Word.
I am appreciating people who have similar enough goals to the world I want to live in, who may approach politics differently than I do, who probably protest differently than I do, but whose actions I can recognize as being in pursuit of that harmony. We're doing different things to work toward a shared vision of the future. Like, this is also, it feels, B, you'll tell me later, but like, this feels so 9 to 1 that,
It's
like,
so 9 to 1. I'm screaming over here. Yeah.
it's so wild. And the lunations of the month, which is to say the new and full moons, really highlight this emphasis on like what relationships are we investing in, what values are we sharing, what values are we prioritizing. Our second and final eclipse of the fall season comes October 2nd at 2:49 p.m. Eastern. This is occurring at 10 degrees of Libra. And this is an annular solar eclipse, or an eclipse that's happening on the Libra new moon. Mercury is also sitting within a degree of the sun and moon. So it's going to be an especially potent new moon for changes to your communication, writing, or relationships. And this eclipse helps us initiate harmony into various aspects of our lives, partially a lot. I shouldn't undersell that, through the uncomfortable process of clearing certain things out that are discordant or at odds with our communities and priorities. Like, it's a new moon eclipse, so like, yay, start energy, but it's on the south node is the technical thing underneath that. And the south node eclipses are always big clearings. So we're letting some shit go. We are moving away from certain things. And then the full moon on October 17th is at 7:26 a.m. Eastern, bright and early for those of us on the East Coast. It's at 24 degrees of Aries. And this full moon is bringing something to completion or to a peak of a cycle or ending. And it connects us back to whatever we were really starting or investing in around the new moon in Aries, which was an eclipse, incidentally, on April 8th of this year. And I'll get into how the lunations highlight certain areas of life for different rising signs once we get to our buckets. But before I kick it to Meg, I want to call out two quick things. And the first is that on October 11th, Pluto, who is the planet that deals with difficult transformation, stations direct in Capricorn for the final time in any of our lifetimes. Pluto in Capricorn has really worked over the other cardinal signs. So that's, if you listen to my first 101 episode, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and of course, Capricorn itself is a cardinal sign. These are the signs that initiate seasons with the equinoxes and solstices. So, on a collective level, since 2008, which is when Pluto went into Capricorn, we have been in the challenge and mess and muck of transforming what cultural and social harmony looks like during Libra season. And this is our final pass. And in the US, it's particularly pronounced because we are, as a country, we are having our Pluto return. Pluto takes hundreds of years to go through a sign. Like, people don't have Pluto returns, but nations do. And so Pluto returns are really big cultural, societal wide check-ins, like, what the fuck are we doing? How are we treating power? Who gets to have power? Who do we push onto the margins? All of that stuff. And so a big question I'm thinking about as this comes to a close is like, what kind of harmony as a country we want to achieve, what kind of institutional power we need to dismantle in order to create a more just and equitable union. A question that I will solve in this specific forecast.
Incredible, honestly. Thank God we've got you.
We're in the muck. We're in the 9 to 1. And my other quick note before I kick it to Meg is much shorter, and it's also a lot sweeter. And it's just a really good day to mark on your calendar for the thing that you most want to do this month. On October 13th, the Libra sun is going to be in a gorgeous, easeful, supportive, opportunity-bringing trine with Jupiter, which is in Gemini. Those are both air signs. That's why it's so fluid and easy and easygoing and fun. And that just brings us a lot of new opportunities. It brings us up spaciousness. It brings us pep in our step. And it's just a great all purpose moment for love, relationships, family, home life, money, career, health, whatever you want to be working on that day. Meg, what is the tarot telling us?
Incredible. The tarot is gonna make you both lose your shit because once again, as with September, The October cards are so on point and so consistently like bringing us back to these conversations and these themes that we've seen, that it's like magic is real. You just can't make this shit up. Tarot is wild and I love it so much. So our theme card for October 2024, which is less like, here is a specific thing that is definitely going to happen to every single person who listens to this episode this month, and much more, what is an energy that might feel present for a lot of us this month, or what is an energy you might need to engage with or explore or consider or visit during this month. It's the Nine of Cups, because of course it is, honestly. I couldn't pick a more on point card for the themes that y'all have been talking about. So our theme card for the month, being the Nine of Cups, brings up a lot of community ideas. It also brings up a lot of harmony ideas, and it also speaks to grief. So I'm going to quickly just talk about some of these main themes right now. The Nine of Cups, I think, most often represents a deep connection to community in all of its various forms, right? Because the element of water is tied to the heart. It's tied to intuition and relationships and care and intimacy, vulnerability, and the people in our lives, right? Water is what connects us and really creates those containers for connection and vulnerability. And nine is also very service oriented, right? When we think about the hermit as like being a sage or someone that people might come to for advice, or someone who is holding up the lantern for others to follow and follow in their footsteps. And then nine itself as well has this real philanthropy kind of vibe to it. And so with the Nine of Cups, we can really think about awareness and appreciation for not just the ways that we are in service to other people, but also the ways that we allow other people to be in service to us. So these are themes of honoring and respecting reciprocity, showing up for each other in authenticity. And to your point, what you were just talking about with harmony, Jeanna, the difference between just trying to keep the peace and prioritizing civility versus being willing to love by actually sitting in discomfort and acknowledging disagreement and wanting to actually resolve things so that growth and intimacy and trust can really happen in a sustainable, ongoing, stabilized sort of way, right? Conflict is always going to happen no matter what we're doing if something lasts long enough. And giving up at the first sign of conflict means that we never really get to grow in intimacy together. But when we're willing to sit in that messy middle, in that tangly, strange release and shift and evolution and growth, then we all get to grow together and we get to make something that is stronger for the sum of its parts. So a lot of common themes here. In addition to our outward relationships and our community connections, I also just have to mention that the Nine of Cups can also be about deep connection to self, right? And the love and compassion that we show to ourselves, trusting in our intuition, trusting in our ability to be vulnerable, etc. This is really about satisfaction. It's a card of satisfaction and contentment and reveling in the present. But I think the Nine of Cups notably also gets associated with wishes and longing, wishes fulfilled that we had in the past, wishes that are starting to now reveal themselves to us as we shift into this end of a cycle, and also wishes that are going to grow and turn into full-blown pursuits in the future. And this can look a lot of different ways, right? Especially as our theme for the month, this might show up for different people in different ways. It can just mean celebrating an ending, thinking about how we're coming from the Eight of Cups and walking away from something. This could mean feeling real stability and pride after having left or shifted a relationship or walked away from a community that wasn't really supporting us or was actually creating more problems than it was helping. But this can also really mean honoring the stability that exists within ourselves and within our relationships. And in either instance, wishes can still show up, right? We can simultaneously be starting to recognize a new emerging desire. And the thing is that wish starting to make itself known doesn't take away from what we have achieved and where we are in our present. I was trying to think about an example for this, and what came to mind is thinking about being on a long journey of like wanting to establish a community, wanting to be part of a group of people that that there's all this trust and love and vulnerability and support, and taking the time to really invest in community and create roots in community and be part of that really lovely reciprocal situation, right? But throughout the course of the journey, because of course building community takes time, right? It takes ongoing investment. It takes us continuing to show up for each other. It also takes us being willing to receive help when we need it, which is hard for us. And I'm just going to keep saying that. But maybe through the long process of building that community and creating that community. Maybe along the way, someone in the community, you start to realize that that might actually be someone that you want more intimacy with, right? That you want to become closer in friendship with, or that you're attracted to, or that you want to pursue something more. It doesn't mean that the community doesn't matter, or that the journey that you had of building that community isn't really real and potent and beautiful. But it also means that the community is stable enough that perhaps you get an opportunity to start looking to something else. And that little glimmer in your eye is the beginning of what might become pursuing a relationship of some kind or deepening intimacy with that other person. All of that is the Nine of Cups. So all of that can live within that card. I also have to acknowledge that sometimes this can bring up feelings of guilt or of grief, because I think sometimes that internal narrative can feel a little judgmental. Like, you got what you wanted, so why are you being greedy? Why are you asking for more? This was a thing that you wanted in the past. Just enjoy it. Just be content. But that's not particularly human. Let's be real. You are allowed to be both grateful for what you have and what you have worked for and are experiencing. And you are also allowed to anticipate what might be next and to dream of bigger futures and more beautiful things, right? If you're familiar with the show Into the Woods, I'm going to show my musical theater roots here because I was a stage manager. The whole thing is relevant to the story of the Nine of Cups, but particularly the fact that the show both opens and closes with the phrase, "I wish," being sung by Cinderella. We start with these characters wishing. We see them in a certain position and we see what they want. Their longing is made palpable to us. They go on adventures, they take risks, they experience magic, they make mistakes, they grieve, they hope, they laugh, they cry. And in the midst of the final song, right, in the midst of the final number, resolution and acknowledgement and mourning and reckoning, the show ends with Cinderella once again saying, "I wish." And it's really a reminder that the story doesn't end just because you get what you want or you realize that what you thought you wanted wasn't actually a good fit. Wishing is human. And so as a theme card for our month, I want you to pay attention to all of your feelings, all of them. The happy ones, the scary ones, the grieving ones, the joyful ones, and hold space for all of them. I know it's uncomfortable. Do it anyway.
Okay, literally, Jeanna is like, no feelings. I'm over here like tearing up with full body chills.
In other news, though, B is a Jupiter ruled person and I am a Saturn ruled person, and this shows up loudly.
And I am a Mercury ruled person. You're holding down the chaos in the middle. Just listen Into the Woods and cry. We're all going to make it. It's going to be fine. Okay. But we also have our truth or dare cards, right? Because I'm not just going to send you out into this giant energy with nothing to show for it. These are our tools. This is going to be your internal thing to consider, to contend with, to challenge yourself with. And then we're also going to have a dare, which is your kind of external risk to take or to consider. So our truth card is the Seven of Pentacles. Now, Pentacles is the suit of earth and the physical. So it's the body, the home, wealth, health, boundaries, and all of these very earthy, sensual, practical things. It's the things that are grounded in our day to day. But 7 is also the number of the spiritual seeker, right? It's the internal quest. B says it's living in the question, which I'm obsessed with. So this combination is one of really assessing and kind of diving into the depths, asking ourselves questions that perhaps don't have particularly simple answers. And in tandem with the energy of Pentacles and Earth, we're really thinking about resourcing and physical needs and paying attention to what nourishes us, both body and soul, right? Because we're still in 7. The 9 of Cups and the 7 of Pentacles both dance around this idea of gratitude. So I think that could be a theme that comes up, but it has to be in an authentic way. This isn't about forcing you to do a gratitude practice if that feels really hokey or performative or whatever. If it feels good, if it's a thing you've been wanting to do, genuinely wanting to do for a while, go nuts, go to town. But you don't have to do that if you don't want to. It's about being honest with the self, whatever that might look like. And so as our truth card for our internal challenge for this month, the 7 of Pentacles wants you to ask questions around what you're seeking and why you're seeking it, especially around physical, tangible resources like money, like health, like your space and energy and time, like your job, like your sense of safety, all of those things. I think it can also ask us to really consider personal boundaries and structures, rules and supports to really evaluate what's working and what isn't. Spend some time this month really honoring whatever stickiness or revelations might come up for you around these topics, and pay attention when those truths bubble up, even if the truths are in the form of questions rather than answers. And then our dare card, of course it is the 5 of Pentacles. Can't make this shit up. Of course it's the 5. The Five of Pentacles often really gets associated in like standardized or kind of flattened out meanings when we simplify, when we're trying to learn the tarot. The Five of Pentacles becomes this card that's primarily associated with illness or injury or grief or like lack, like a physical lack of resources or money. There's so much more to this card. And especially in the context of a dare for our month ahead, instead of a predictive, we're all going to get sick this month, like these kinds of narrow interpretations don't serve us particularly well. So we have to dig a little bit deeper and look at this card through a different lens to see what we're actually going to want to step into and activate and utilize as a tool for the month. So as Bea already talked about, 5 is our number of breakthroughs and change, shaking things up, taking a risk, questioning what we know, and also bridging the physical and the spiritual. But there's also this kind of vibe of recognizing what has been done before, what we have done before through the lens. And you can think about that as like honoring where we might be ready for something different or something unexpected. Sometimes that can look like disrupting our own shit, but other times it can look like play or adventure or taking some chances, trying something new, shifting direction, etc. Remember that the 5 of Pentacles is the middle card of the suit. It's the hinge. It's the pivot point in the story of Pentacles. And so this can also be a really cool, exciting change you make that clarifies what you want or a shift that opens some new doors. So your dare for this month is to be brave and to let yourself acknowledge any kind of internal tension or friction or questioning or weirdness that might be coming up around your job, your ambitions, your boundaries, your home, your health, your resources, whatever. Again, this doesn't negate what came before, like we were talking about with the 9 of Cups, but it can indicate like some staleness or a desire for change. So free yourself from what you were doing before and give yourself permission to perhaps play around with some new ways of caring for your earthy needs, so to speak. So, can you believe?
Yeah, I wrote down so many things when both of you were talking, because the way when you were talking about the 9 of Cups, Meg, it like just felt so resonant with everything Bea was saying with like the 9 and to the 1, and then with what I was saying about harmony. But you articulated a particular idea of like keeping the peace versus sitting in discomfort. And that reminded me of what Dr. King wrote in Letter from a Birmingham Jail, because he says that there is the idea of negative peace versus positive peace, and that the white moderate is committed to keeping a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, rather than a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. And that just feels like such a articulation of everything we were just saying. And yeah, I'll just pause there.
Yeah, I'll pick it up there because I think too, when Meg said that, I thought about 8 being our collective year number that we're not getting out of until it's over, you know? So that number gets to hang out with us for the year. And 8 being strength, like does have this real protective quality and wanting to protect what is important to you, wanting to protect what you love. And that whole aspect of going to battle for what it is that you want to fight for. And so that feels like this negative piece, positive piece of protecting. Sometimes, you know, we have to be in conflict in order to protect what it is that we love.
Yeah.
And to not shy away from that this month. While also keeping in mind that we just need to be really informed and really intentional about how we're going into that battle.
100%. Yeah, it really feels like I just kept writing down authenticity because it really just felt like wanting to do things that really resonate in a real way and being willing to do the hard thing and make the adjustment or name the discomfort or name the friction so that it can be acknowledged and like tended to, not in a way that's like, we just got to fix this so everything's smooth sailing, but in a way that's really like, what is this friction revealing, you know, and what are we smoothing out, and where are there jagged edges that really need to be noticed because they might actually be useful tools for us to continue doing the work.
Well, speaking about smoothing things out, I'm a Libra moon, and I will only be referred to as Lube Moon from now on.
Oh God, is that our first merch?
No, I love that.
I think
though.
it's good. I think
It so speaks though to like, I think the lead, like that aspect of Venus, like so being in charge of most of October, so speaks to this idea that like we have to be willing to sit with the tension and move through the tension, because that's actually how we get to the Nine of Cups. And that's actually how we get into this place where it's like we get to wish, and then our wishes get to be fulfilled, and also our wishes get to change. And I also, like, Meg, when you were talking about that with Into the Woods, it reminded me of how at the end of the month, and I didn't talk a ton about this, but like Scorpio season brings us into the depth of autumn and the depth of decay and the change and transformation that is like the molting and the composting, and like, amazing. We did it. We got what we wanted, and now it's winter. Like, it very much starts to bring us there and into that like real, and we were talking about this even for the September forecast, like really reevaluating here at the end of the year what our priorities are and like where we want to spend our time and energy.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeanna, I'm putting you on the spot here. I think there's something really interesting about being in the 8, 9, 10, 1 part of the spiral for two reasons. First, during eclipse season was really interesting to me because it is, and I know you're going to do an individual episode about eclipses, but it is a little hands off the wheel. Like, yes, we can do things and move, but a lot of it is like cosmic chiropractic, like being snapped like into place. But then also 9 and 10 being like the leap from Sagittarius to Capricorn, I think is very interesting too. Maybe that's just because I'm Jupiter ruled and you're Saturn ruled. But yeah, I'm just curious, like, what you think about the number combinations and those astrological alignments.
Yeah, I think that it really I mean, eclipses are always the end of some cycle, and this year it's very, very loud because it's the second to last eclipse in the Aries Libra cycle. So it's not just that eclipses tend to bring about dramatic and beginnings and endings, ushering in, really new seasons of life. But also, we are literally like almost at the end of the Aries Libra cycle that's been going on since spring 2023. I think May 2023 was the first one in that series. And so the fact that that is ending, and it's eclipses anyway, and just clearing big shit out, and that like where we are numerologically is also very literally that transition point. It just feels like this is not the time to cling hard to things that are not working. This is the time to really embrace letting shit go. Like, and really embrace, like, even though change is scary and what not knowing what's on the other side is scary. And there's that whole, like, that I think also in relationship with the sunk cost fallacy of like, oh, I've invested so much time already, so much effort, so many resources. I have to stick with this. And it's like eclipse season, and the numbers are very like, no, you don't. You get to start over. You get to pivot. You get to make a new decision. Like, we are rejecting the sunk cost fallacy in October.
I love that too, in tandem with or in connection with the Nine of Cups energy, because I feel like the Nine of Cups is very, did you walk away from that shitty relationship? Good for you. Like, did you separate yourself from a family member that was causing harm, or, a really toxic like coworker environment, or, you know what I mean? Like, what did you already do that was scary and hard? And how can you actually acknowledge that and celebrate it as you continue to move forward? Like, taking pride and satisfaction in making those hard choices is also part of the story.
Yeah. And Meg, you said something else too about the Nine of Cups being connected to grief. And sometimes, like, we talked about this with Kill Your Darlings, but it's like when your wish changes, there is grief in that because it's putting a dream down, and it doesn't have to be forever. It could just be for now, but it's saying, based on who I am now, what I know about myself, the current climate, whatever, it's just not the right time for this. And so I think there is just inherent grief in loving something and letting it go.
Yeah. And I loved what you said, Bee, with the Campbell, bringing up the Campbell's hero's journey, like, because it's so, I think that is such a smart, it ended up just being such a perfect introduction into what we were all talking about, in that way that it's like, Into the Woods is so interesting. It's because it's what happens after the reward, what happens after you get what you want. Or I guess act one really ends with like, all right, you got what you want. now what? Like, what comes after happily ever after? And I think that's also just so interesting, like in Western, just to speak for, I guess, like the US part of Western culture, because like Cinderella stories and the happily ever after, and okay, but you got to grow up and you got to get married, to a man, and you've got to buy a house, then you've got to have kids, and like all of these different dominant cultural narratives that try to funnel people into specific choices. But it's like, okay, but what comes next? Yeah, B, I want to ask, I mean, maybe this is like wildly getting ahead of ourselves, but given that you're the one who brought up the hero's journey, like what is your take on the fact that we're kind of we're in this liminality between the reward and what next?
Yeah. So, first of all, I love the hero's journey and I use it a lot in storytelling and metaphor. I do understand that the monomyth is problematic. And so, if you're not a Campbell fan, I hear you, I see you, you are loved and appreciated. There are other ways to tell stories. But one thing that's interesting, and I kind of already mentioned it as well in talking about the numbers that denote cycles, full cycles, is that the hero's journey is 12 steps. So when we're thinking about the idea of moving from reward to what is next, in the hero's journey, just like in the year, we actually have 3 more steps after the reward. And in fact, the like final ordeal and the real death and rebirth of the hero comes after the reward. So that's so what you were just talking about, Jeanna, with what happens next. And so the next step, the 10th step in the hero's journey, is the road back. So after you have garnered claimed the reward for yourself, then you have to return home. And it's actually on the road back that the hero is tested a final time and ultimately is resurrected before they can return. So I don't say that to be defeatist in the way that it's like, love the reward while you have it because you're going to die soon. But
Very Scorpio, B, very Scorpio.
Yeah. No, but just that, like, there is more to come. And that I think the reward comes at a time when we as people and we as heroes narratively need to reap the benefits of the journey that we're on in order to get us to continue to the end. So it's not saying that happily ever after, now everything's perfect and we're never going to have to deal with anything ever again. But it is saying like we get rewards along the way. This is our little treat, but it's the most important of the little treats because it's what we're bringing back to people to say, hey, I've actually gone out into the wilderness and I've snagged this for us. And now we can all share the wealth. I'm like, have big little red hen vibes.
Oh yeah.
In this of like, I've suffered for this, but now like everybody can benefit from this. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like what's next, we still have to make it home. This is the point of the journey where we're still very far away from returning, and we'll meet other battles along the road. But like, this is the elixir that we'll get to take with us.
Is this where we want to talk about like the specific parts of the month, our buckets?
Yeah.
To be like, okay, what are we taking with us?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
What are we putting in our little Red Riding Hood basket?
What are our backpacks? I love your little 10.
Our backpacks.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, 10. It's just like a person wearing a backpack.
Stop it. Not well.
Little buds. Okay, so yes, buckets. We're going to talk about finance, home, love, and health. And I will kick us off with finances. So our numbers for the month are 1 and 9, and those are not really money numbers, but they do highlight the self and the community. And so when I was thinking about money through this lens, it really brought up how resources are shared, how they're accumulated, how they're hoarded maybe by some who are keeping too much. But mostly, I think the numerological message of the month for money is to not allow it to take up too much space in the overall pie chart of our lives. I think as Westerners in late stage capitalism, we have all of these really powerful money narratives and we feel things about them. And, so this is kind of like feast or famine vibes a little too. But this month in October, money is not the be all end all. And we are being asked to consider other forms of resourcing, other forms of sustenance, and really see if you can free yourself from putting money up on that pedestal. This also feels very Pluto's final trek through Capricorn vibes. Yeah. And specifically, if you're in a personal 2, 5, or 8 month, those are the emotional numbers. So this month, October, might require you to do a little bit more tending to your nervous system and to wait for the emotional wave to crash before you make any big decisions. So whether that's spending or saving, that's up to you, but just not letting your emotions drive the train this month.
That makes so much sense. The lunations this month really put a spotlight on personal resources, which includes money, finances, all that stuff for Virgo and Pisces risings. And Virgo and Pisces risings have been through it for the last few years, particularly in regards to money. And I'm thinking about, as we all like kind of dig into the month, about how this closing of this eclipse cycle is really preparing Virgo and Pisces risings for the next eclipse cycle, which is incidentally in Virgo and Pisces. And like that's going to be like, and the spotlight's on you. But this addressing your resources is really helping you get ready for that cycle, if that makes sense. And so Virgo risings have the new moon Libra eclipse highlighting their money. And so this can just look like a beginning that clears the slate, something kind of getting metaphorically flushed down the toilet in order for something new to come in. It definitely brings a lot of clarity though. Like with Mercury here, we're definitely having very clear realizations, very clear contracts. Like we are getting particular about the fine print. And for Pisces rising, it's the Aries full moon later this month that highlights your money. And so again, here we want to look at what you were initiating or investing in around the Aries new moon on April 8th. And this is just a great moment to check in with any financial decisions you made then that are perhaps having a longer term impact than you desired. Alternately, like if you made some major investments back then this is a great moment to like scale it up. Yeah, that's what I'll say. We're just looking at what's happening and adjusting accordingly.
Yeah, and I think those themes from both of what you both said are really reflected in the cards as well, because both the 5 and the 7 of Pentacles showing up feels to me like a call to just get honest about your resources and your boundaries and your needs, and also how you work to actually take care of yourself. I think both 7 and 5 are numbers that are willing to take some risks and try some new things. But for me, this feels less like putting your life savings into like the riskiest investment you can find, and more about, again, really authentically checking in with yourself to see if the ways that you are saving and spending and resourcing yourself are enough. I think it's also something that popped into my head while you were talking, Bee, was thinking about how to utilize your resources perhaps differently, or consider that you might have a lot in terms of community or emotional resourcing in a way that feels different than your earthy resources. So like maybe you don't have the money to buy a car, but maybe you have a friend with a car that's really excited to drive you around. And instead of asking for trying to buy a car of your own, you can trade some favors, and so that you can utilize the resource that is that relationship and that willingness to serve and find a way to take care of you both that way. So I think there's also calls for some creativity and some new ways of thinking about what actually is available to you, instead of, again, kind of fretting about maybe just not having cold hard cash landing in your lap in the way that you might dream of, right?
I love going after that, Meg, because some of this repurpose and see what's available to you that other people might have is totally the vibe that I am going with for home, actually. So, home this month, you could find yourself wanting to redecorate or remodel or even just do a deep clean on the home space. This feels very Virgo into Libra for me, of wanting things to be pretty and clean and clear. And especially for any witches who observe Samhain at the end of the month as the new year, we're making space for the new. But 9 rules the community, and it rules like what already exists, the whole. So I really feel like in October, don't throw away what you could donate or rehome. And then also don't sleep on buying secondhand. So garage or stoop sales, thrift stores, online marketplaces, like new, one energy wants new, but like new to us is new enough. We can use what already exists and what might already be available to us in community. Like you were talking about, Meg, getting creative with the resources that are already around us in terms of if we want to do things to our home, our physical home this month. And then for along that vein, for those of us in a 4 or a 6 personal month, just make sure that you're informing those that you share space with of your intentions and your plans. It feels very much like somebody knocking down a wall and then their partner gets home and is like, whoa, you don't have a wall where there once was a wall. And this feels like if the vibes are right, this could create space for you to work on renovations together or like be in a collaborative space. But kind of like the harmony vibes that you were talking about, this could also mean working in tandem but separate. I'm going to do this part of the project, you do that part of the project. We need both steps to make the whole. So thinking about shared solid foundations, shared goals, shared foundations, and then not making any wild moves without telling the people you live with.
Everything both of you just said around like new to you is new, we're reusing, recycling. I just want to like underline that 5 times if you, the listener, have a Cancer rising, because that South Node new moon eclipse in Libra on October 2nd is clearing out your 4th house of home, family, parents, grandparents, heritage, cultural roots, all of that. And so it's, again, though, like I mentioned before, like when it's a South Node new moon eclipse, it's not just, oh, we're starting a new home project. It has very big like renovation, restoration vibes. Like we're redoing it. We're literally, in order to bring the new, we are clearing other stuff out. So I would just be aware of that. Also be aware of possible shifts in like familial dynamics or values. And then it's a sort of similar, but also very different story for Capricorn risings who have the full moon in Aries highlighting this area of life. But if you have a Capricorn rising, then this full moon is more highlighting the completion peaks of home family cycles, like whether this looks like dealing with the aftermath of a major change in your family structure or the aftermath of a move. But the thing with this lunation that I haven't talked a lot about, but I think is especially relevant here because you're Capricorn rising, you've had Pluto going over your ascendant and like through your 1st house for what's math, 16 years, but also it's squaring the new moon. It's like, I think within a 5-degree square of that lunation. Just be extra mindful of power dynamics with family, whether that's chosen family, natal family, expectations getting put on you by parents or grandparents. If you are a parent or grandparent, be mindful of the expectations you're putting on your descendants. And just in general for Capricorn risings, this is a time to be aware of respecting your own boundaries and working to avoid situations where people are impinging on your personal sovereignty. Like, don't be afraid to just go in a room, close the door, take some alone time, Again, we're communicating it to people we share a house with, but like we are also getting what we need and making sure that we are taking care of our feelings and our bodies. Meg, what are the tarot cards doing?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm just going to be a broken record over here, but yeah, this combination of like Pentacles cards and the 9 of Cups does really feel like a call to recognize what is really satisfying in your home and your family life, and also what isn't, right? How are you physically and emotionally resourced with regard to home and family? And what might that look like if you made a change in your living situation, right? Whether that means the people that you're living with or the physical space of where you're living. I think that especially in late stage capitalism and this particular nightmare that we are dealing with, stability can be really alluring and can mean that we prioritize stability over our own comfort just because it's there or because we don't want to disrupt it because we're afraid to maybe take a risk. And so I think that because of that tendency and because of that fear, it can mean that we get stuck in our ways, or we tell ourselves that something is actually fine, or we're just going to make do, even when there could be changes that we would make that would actually make things feel a little bit easier. Again, either in relationship with the people that we live with or in the physical space itself. So I think that these cards really support what you both said around both literally changing the home, like literally doing renovations, bringing in things that are new to us that are going to refresh the space or make it more comfortable. And also that Nine of Cups really does speak to honoring the way that you are in service to others and receiving what you need from others by being open and honest with them, communicating your needs, and also taking care of those needs when you need to.
Okay, love. Love this month in October. I feel like it's a little Sour Patch Kids. Like first they're sweet, then they're sour.
I love
But
Sour Patch Kids. I have some in the kitchen right now.
as you should, they're delicious.
They're perfect.
But when it comes to love, I think October could see both first dates or like the budding new relationships, or whether that means platonic, romantic with yourself, but it could also see the opposite, the end of the spectrum, the breakup, the dismantling, all that jazz. And for now, I do kind of want to focus on the latter when relationships meet their end. This is not the month to handle things with a mallet. I cannot stress that enough. Like, we are in 9 energy. We are mature here. We are considering others. We are showing up as our wisest selves as we navigate these transitions. We are not just, Thor's hammering our way through our breakups or our endings this month. And this is a little spicy, but if you're in a personal 1 or 7 month, please be careful of the overlap in relationships. I think sometimes we can't help it, right? Sometimes like we meet somebody else and that is the catalyst for us realizing that the relationship that we've been in hasn't been serving us or meeting our needs. But just be careful of how you are handling that transition. Again, how you are informing people sometimes. And this might be a little bit of a hot take. It's like, I'm not condoning cheating at all, but sometimes like it's nobody's business how you are handling things as long as you are being honest with the people about how you feel and how you want to move through. So again, we're not ghosting. If you're in the first parts of like the newness phase and it's not working out, we're not ghosting people. We are communicating. We're being honest. We're handling our shit like grown people. And it might not feel good, but in October, clarity is kindness, and it will save the other person and it will save you. So just be good to people out there and yourself.
Once again, I am so struck by like the similarity. Like I can't even be with how similar what you and I like separately prepped for this was. So because I'm going to cover the lunations first for the people who are really having those new and full moons like highlight their charts. But the dates I picked for the month were very like beware. Be mindful. Like it's much more of, even though it's Libra season, which there's a whole tangent I did not go on about how Libra is not romantic, that we just avoided that. But like, even though it's Libra season, it's not a real romantic month over here. This is just to say, Aries and Libra risings, you've been dealing with eclipses in the parts of your chart that have to do with you as an individual and you with other people. So again, like partnerships, whether it's your queer platonic life partner or a marriage partner, agents, business partners, like for all of us here at the Coven, like we have a contract. This is a 7th house relationship because like we are business partners. Partner means a lot of different things, but Aries and Libra risings have been dealing with really intense energy in these parts of life since like May 2023. And the Libra eclipse really drains something out of the relationship well, in a way that's ultimately helpful and ultimately helps a stronger foundation come in. But for Aries risings, not to say that it's necessarily a breakup, but it's big change. Like some new big change in your relationship structure, whether that again is like romantic, business partnerships, is happening at the top of the month. And then on the flip side, for Libra risings, the full moon in Aries brings something to fruition that has been brewing since April. And so that could look like a milestone in a relationship. It could also be like you've been trying to date and you need to just take a break or redo your settings on your dating app. And like this cycle is done and we're starting a new one and what needs to change moving forward. And for everyone, this time around. There were some very loud dates in terms of how it could impact relationships. So while we had some really sweet and tender moments in September, October is a little bit more like, let's just be mindful of how we're moving through minefields. Exercise caution and care, take all your safety precautions, like bring all your gear, make sure you're doing all that jazz. On October 6th, a Mercury Mars square has really big feelings are getting hurt because we are arguing over the definition of the thing that we're fighting about, energy. I partly say that because that is something I like to do. And so my fellow, but you didn't use the right word, people. I would like to invite you with me to take a seat, take a breath, and walk away. And then on October 28th, Venus is in a very much absolutely the fuck not, we are not doing this square with Saturn. Venus is love, Saturn is restriction. And so definitely I would not schedule a first date for that night. I would not schedule a major relationship event for that day at all. I wouldn't sign a contract with business partners that day. If it happens to be your anniversary or like some kind of, major like event, just like Bee said, lead with kindness, lead with gentleness. Again, we are all in the same energy. So let's just be mindful and respectful and gentle with each other.
I once again, I'm just going to say all the same things that y'all said, so just through a different set of language. So I did focus a little bit more on the 9 of Cups, but I think most of what y'all said actually feels contained and connected to that card. So I think in love, often the 9 of Cups can feel really satisfying and calming, like an opportunity to revel in contentment or joy, like really thinking long term about what the next step is going to be. So it could be like quiet moments at home with your loved ones, or thinking about, making it official, or, proposing, or moving in together, or starting a new group, maybe dreaming about those things, or starting to recognize a desire for those things. But also there can be a little like stagnation sometimes with the 9 of Cups, or a little bit of like, this thing is so well established and so safe that we're kind of bored. And so I think too, like these other cards that are about change and like really rethinking the grounding like foundations within our home or our life or our love or whatever, there can be a desire for change, and that can look a little bit reckless at times. Even though we're talking about the Suits of Pentacles, I think because we have both the 5 and the 7, it's worth noting that. So yeah, this could be significant for some folks in terms of like moving in together, telling someone you love them. But it could also really be about instead honoring and respecting and valuing the ways that you have chosen yourself, and not like blowing that up because you just felt chaotic and wanted to make a big change. So recognize too ways that you have not settled for things that were not worthy of you, and don't go back on that. Is really kind of what came up for me looking at these cards.
I love that, Meg, you were like, maybe propose to someone. And I'm like, don't cheat on your partner. But if you have to, just be careful.
And just not on the 28th.
Not on the 28th. No proposals on the 28th, okay? Like, that is your takeaway.
To take us home with health. Again, we are not doctors. This is not health advice. However, 1 is a practical number and 9 is a mental number. So in October, we are again approaching our health, not from an emotional place, but from a place of logic and reason. And again, this is not in a way that bypasses or minimizes our experiences or our intuition. I actually think sometimes intuition gets lumped in with emotion when it doesn't belong there, because it does come from the body, which is where emotions also live and manifest. But our intuition is connected to things that are so much bigger than just our bodies. So prioritize your intuition, your logic, your reason as being separate from the emotional body. And then with 9 being the whole ecosystem, just look at things holistically. Try and see the bigger picture of your health, especially if you are making tweaks or changes to routine or habits this month. Just make sure that you're looking kind of at the whole of it. And if you have questions, again, what aren't you looking at? What seems easy to focus on, but what might actually be going on over here in the corner that you're not thinking about. And then if you're in a 3 or a 9 personal month, you might actually be rewriting some larger narratives around health this month, or even just retooling the ways in which you approach taking care of yourself. So again, with this 9 to 1 and looking at baby steps again, it's the little things that make up the big things. So if you are somebody who doesn't consider daily habits to be supportive or harmful, that might be up for review this month for you. Again, we are looking at things gentle but honest is kind of the vibe around this month. And yeah, just again, taking really good care of like the whole of you as a person.
That feels so, I mean, that just feels so resonant with where I'm at personally in my own like healing journey right now from surgery. So, like, I appreciate that call in and reminder. For health with astrology, this month I'm going to give you a few days that might be a little activating. So, and these are for also, I should say that if you live not on the East Coast, if you of the United States, if you're like 6 or 8 hours ahead or behind, the dates might be squishy because the moon moves. So, the moon, which is the planet we look to for the body, it moves so quickly. So, just like, also check your astrology app or ephemeris to see if these are the dates that are also true for you. So, with Eastern time in mind, most of October 10th into the morning of the 11th, we have a Capricorn moon, which is immediately a little bit great for work energy, hard on the body because it's really repressive of emotions. And it's in an opposition, which is to say a really like tense tug of war, like rope tension with Mars, which we talked about last month. Mars being so much like where our motivation is and how we want to express ourselves and take action. And so when the moon is opposing Mars, and especially when it's on that Cancer Capricorn axis, this can really look like pent up emotional stress in the body, not being able to like find a pressure valve, right? So my advice is around those days, if you're feeling like, if you're feeling really pent up, what can you do for yourself to release some pressure, to express breath work? Gentle movement, good food, hydration, really going back to basics is going to be your friend here. And I'll also add that during that time on the 10th and the 11th, the moon is also sitting with Pluto in Capricorn, which that moon Pluto conjunction, then opposite Mars, it's very tense energy in the body. That is what I will say. And so just really, stretching, finding the release valves, taking care of yourself, it's going to help.
I love that. Yeah, I think to just continue echoing y'all, I think if last month was do what you know feels good for you, this month is and all those stuff, those things that you didn't bother doing because they don't help. Like, what if you changed some of those things, or what if you started to open your mind a little bit to reconsidering or revisiting some of that stuff that you didn't reach for or that you didn't need? Just like with finances, having those two kind of odd number pentacle cards feels very get real with yourself about what's working, what's actually supporting you and nourishing you, and what isn't. And what actually came to mind is that this doesn't have to be a huge thing. This doesn't have to be like, I need a new bed. I need to live in a new place. I need to reorganize my entire workout routine. I need a new doctor. It could be something like, I've been on this medication for a decade. How is it impacting my long-term health? Like, is it still working the way that I want it to? Do I want to maybe start to think about if I need to adjust this dosage, or, like smaller kind of incremental types of things? Because Pentacles is Earth, but it's also a really slow moving element. So yeah, thinking about, or like if you've been running for a really long time and your joints are really fucked up because of it. Hi, this happened to me. Do you need to keep running, or could you maybe switch to swimming? Or, is there something that might be gentler on your body that's still going to give you the release and the movement that you need, but that maybe isn't going to hurt you as much as it has been, or that isn't going to be building up in the body, to your point, Jeanna, in the same way that it has been in the past. I also wanted to say that if you've been wanting to try out a new like physical routine or a new self-care ritual or a new way of resourcing your health, your body, your mind, and your heart, this could be a great month to get practical about what that would actually entail, like what it's going to cost in terms of money, what it's going to cost in terms of time and energy. If you get massages like me, are you going to be sore for 3 days afterwards like I am? And is that something you need to plan around? So really the impact that those kinds of choices might have on you, both in the short term and in the long term.
Woo! October.
Yeah. October.
It's so wild because like I just continue to be blown away at how in conversation all of this is.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so cool. I mean, some of this is also so like, oh, okay, October, let's prep. But like also, I think it's just really incredible how we are all using and how you, the listener, can like use these different modalities to arrive at a pretty similar place, kind of like harmony. Like we're all doing different things, but we got to the same point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I actually think there's something nice about the harmony also touching on unity, you know, of coming together in a similar fashion, because I think sometimes, especially with spirituality and spiritual tools, like we just, maybe I'll just speak for myself. Sometimes there are so many messages that I'm like, which one do I listen to? And there are so many options or so many planets to look at or so many numbers or 78 cards. And you're like, well, but what can I distill from this? So I love that we're all saying the same thing, to be honest. At least
Me
we
too.
know a good starting place. And like for the muck, we're all in it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels very gratifying too, just in like whatever modality you're using, you're still going to be able to find truth within it that's going to be relevant to the moment that you're in. Like we're all approaching this with different modalities, but we're able to offer similar kinds of advice and insights on the month. And I just think that is rad as fuck. And like, magic is real, y'all.
Oh, I love this. Okay, well, the Hag Show has brought you the whole shebang
We survived.
this
You
month.
know your month now. Go forth. Go forth and conquer. No, don't actually go forth and conquer. Go forth and be gentle.
Go forth and make meaningful change.
Yes, go forth and leave your hammer at home. Okay, but beyond this, we are not just sending you into the void of October by your lonesome. We gave you all of the September episodes up front because we wanted you to love us and we wanted to be, you know, helpful as we launched the show. But now in October, we're going to start more of a weekly format. So our individual episodes, which we served you all at once, will come weekly. And I think we should talk about what is in store this month on Call Your Coven. First, with numerology, I'm going to be doing an individual episode all on numerology and witchcraft, the intersection, how you can use numerology to support your craft. And I'm specifically going to be highlighting Samhain, which is on the Witch's Wheel of the Year. Some use it, some don't. I personally have no preference. I just am delivering you the information. So we'll talk about the numerology of Samhain this year and how to work with it, and then some broader topics in terms of like what numbers rule what types of spells and stuff like that to get you in the mood for witchy season.
Oh, so cool.
Love it.
I am going to be talking about eclipses, and not these specific eclipses that we're experiencing in this moment, but rather just eclipses in general, how we get the meanings out of them that we do, what are they symbolic of in different astrological traditions. The nodes of the moon are not planets, and lots of other fun little 101 things. It'll be a really short primer, but will hopefully help explain something that the internet loves to catastrophize.
Word. And I am going to be doing for your tarot an episode all about how to build a daily practice for yourself. And I wish I hadn't said daily because it doesn't have to be daily. The whole point is that your tarot practice gets to be your own. And so this is really going to be about developing a routine, beginning to start the process of learning to meet your cards, studying your cards, beginning to read your cards, and figuring out what actually feels good for you in your tarot practice, wherever you are in terms of level.
And we are also low key going to try to bring you a special edition episode on the election later on in the month. In terms of astrology, I personally am very obsessed with presidential astrology and looking at the patterns in who Americans like to elect. And of course, we'll be looking at the charts of the two major party candidates, as well as the chart of the election itself. An astrologer is clearly not employed by the government because our elections for like the last 20 years have been on terrible days astrologically. So we're going to talk about that. And B, I think you're also going to bring some
I am.
witchy
Yeah.
goodness.
We'll talk about numerology in terms of the election, the date, and then also the candidates. We can look at their personal charts. I do have to just say, I already started looking into like numerological patterns of election days over the years. Nothing is really popping out at me, but who knows? I will keep looking. We'll see.
Yeah.
And Meg might just be there for the vibes.
Yeah, I'm very deliberately not pulling cards about this election. I have absolutely no interest in pulling tarot about this election or for either major party candidate or for any of the United States elections this year. But yeah, I might just come hang out and cause chaos. We'll see when y'all schedule it.
Yeah, we'll also talk about practical self-care tips, things to consider planning ahead for, maybe even get witchy with it. Like we talked about possible spells. You know, there is a new moon on November 1st and eclipse season will be over, so it'll be workable. So we can talk about that. But yeah, we'll see what comes up. But really, just for October to wrap us up, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, thank you so much for joining the Coven and for all the support that you have shown us in terms of getting the show up off the ground. Please, 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 we're not just talking into a void. Please speak back to us. Let us know what you liked, what was helpful, what you'd like to see more of, and then do all of the things that will help us out. Like, subscribe, comment, rate, review. Find us on social media. We are at Call Your Coven on Instagram. You can check out our website, callyourcoven.com. And then if you really like what you hear, you can also support the podcast on Patreon. This is new. We did not shout this out in our September forecast, but we are on Patreon. Right now, we're using our free tier as kind of a newsletter of sorts. So if you want to get the episode updates, you can sign up for free. But we also do have a $5 supportive tier. It's just to help reimburse us for the cost of creating the show. And we're hoping to add perks later on and maybe even more tiers as this grows. You know, we've thought about monthly Q&As or coven meetings, special merch drops, discounts for working with us individually. Who knows? Sky's the limit there. So join us on Patreon, and then please tell your friends. Obviously, the coven aspect of this does mean us, but it also means you and this community. So thanks for the coven lovin'. And yeah, unless I missed anything, we'll see you individually this month, but back in November.
Yay.
Yay.
Bye from the hags.
Goodbye.
Christ.